Hey, Jason.
Hey, Reg. How are you?
I'm pretty good. You know, it's August now, and the heat's starting to get to me a little bit, hoping it'll cool down.
Yeah.
Might be the first summer where I've actually wanted fall to arrive a little sooner, because I always thought I was a summer person, but, you know, things change.
Yeah. I mean, well, humidity changes for one thing. If you're not familiar with Colorado, and some of our listeners may be from out of state, we used to be a very dry state, but we have been fairly humid this summer and last summer from what I remember.
Yeah. And you know, Jason, I started working with you 8 years ago this month.
That's right. It has been 8 years now.
And I really like working with you. But, you know, you're planning to retire at some point, right?
Some point in the future, yes.
Yeah, same. And that's why a lot of our clients come to see us at FP Foco is they have plans to retire at some point in the future, and they're working hard and saving and doing everything they can to plan to get to a day when they're not working and saving anymore.
Yes, and as great as it is working with you, Reg, there is going to be that day where I will ride off into my retirement sunset, and get on with other business.
Well, I imagine you, like some of our clients, probably many, if not most of our clients, are planning to receive a certain type of income when they are retired.
Yeah, well, and I think that type of income, if as our listeners already know, our Social Security income or our sort of baseline, right? As the name implies, Social Security, it's sort of that underlying that safety net of income.
Yeah, didn't it spring out of the Great Depression?
Yeah.
To allow people to have some type of, like you said, basic income so that they weren't destitute.
To keep people out of poverty, essentially, in old age, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's a great thing, but on the flip side, we've been seeing some pretty negative headlines that can be a little fear-inducing when it comes to Social Security lately.
Yes, absolutely. The Social Security trustees released their report in early June that led to a number of different headlines about the potential for all sorts of different scenarios that maybe were not so exciting to contemplate.
Yeah, you sent me an article about this earlier, and I was just looking back at an article that you wrote for our blog almost a year ago. It was last September. And back then, we were looking at a potential 19% cut to Social Security as early as 2033, when the Social Security Trust Fund was previously expected to run out. So you read this article that you sent me today. Catch me up on what the news of the day is.
Well, so interesting, that 19% cut is now up to 22, right? So the inaction scenario, if no action is taken, at the end of 2032, the trust fund will run out of its sort of surplus, right? And then basically the benefits from there are simply only able to be paid in the amount of income kind of coming in, or the tax, right? The payroll tax that comes into the trust. So that will be the automatic, right? No, without any action, right? That would be what would happen, would be that 22% cut. So what the trustees did in their report is outlined a couple of other single sort of, I guess the phrase single lever, right? Just like one action being taken as a way to shore up the fund.
Okay, let me get this straight. We have 6 years to do something.
Yes.
They presented 3 of these options, and right now we're looking at a potential kind of worst case scenario, 22% cut.
22% if no action's taken, but that also doesn't solve anything too. That's the key. Is
right.
That's a worst case scenario in the sense that everyone had a reduction of benefits and nothing has been worked out for how to handle and adjust things in the future.
Okay, I want you to check my math here before we get into these 3 potential changes. So, Jason, how much of retirement income on average is Social Security meant to provide?
It's right around 40%, I believe.
Yep, that's the number that always comes to mind for me.
Yeah, that's the average. Yeah.
Now, of that 40%, if we're looking at the worst case scenario,
sure,
at a 22% cut as of today.
Yes.
What is 22% of 40%?
Right, just under, 9%, right? 8.8%.
Yeah, 8.8%. And that's a lot less scary number than 22%. but it's only happening if you're one of our average people using the average proportion of Social Security for your retirement income. And Jason, I think there's a way that we can maybe quell some fears for at least listeners who are clients of ours or who are using Right Capital, the financial planning software.
Yeah, there's some stress test tools inside of the Right Capital analysis that will allow you to cut up to 100% of Social Security benefits. So the default that it's set to when we go into our stress test and we look at it is a 20% cut. And it just evaluates, okay, if that were to happen, what would be sort of the outcome? And it can combine it with many other different scenarios. Inflation goes up, healthcare costs go up, taxes go up, like you live longer, all of these different things you can combine together and look at, okay, in this kind of really bad scenario, like what is my probability of making it through my financial goals, or what other changes would I have to make to do that?
Yeah, you can kind of tweak and tailor your plan for you in there. But let's get back to the Social Security trustees report, because they might make some changes that would then potentially impact all these financial planning decisions that folks are making. So talk us through the potential updates they could make to the system.
Well, yeah, so these are their recommendations, right? Congress still needs to do something about it, right? Because the solutions, right, have something to do with how the law is written and how the law plays out, right?
Fair
so
point.
the three scenarios, and we'll talk about what they are, and then we'll go through each one of them individually. One is raising the payroll tax rate, right? The other is cutting benefits proactively for everyone, or the last one being cutting benefits only for new claimants. Those are the three scenarios that they proposed for action.
Okay, so zooming in on the potential for scenario one here. Right now, we're paying in 6.2% of our income toward the Social Security system. Our employers, if we are employed by someone, they're matching the other 6.2%. It's a total of 12.4% of our income going into the Social Security system.
Yes. And so the proposal is to increase that total, right, between employer and employee by 4.25%. So bring the total rate from 12.4% up to 16.65%. So what does that mean for employees? That means 8.3-ish, right? 8.33% would be the Social Security tax for employees and employers, right? And that would prevent the sort of, it would create what they call long-term solvency, right? It would allow the trust fund to return to a place where it can sort of sustain itself for a long period of time.
You know, I'm a big fan about putting these numbers in perspective. So any listeners out there, if you are employed and you're thinking, oh gosh, I don't want more of my dollars going to Social Security and away from me, grab your calculator, type in your salary, and multiply that by 2.125%. That would be the additional amount that would be going into the Social Security system to keep it solvent if scenario one went through.
Caveat to that, by the way, Social Security tax only applies to a fixed amount of, or up to a fixed amount, I should say, of income, right? So that the cap being that number that sort of is not, I believe it's about $185,000, right, in 2026. So any income earned above that, this does not apply or would not apply in this scenario, as the wage cap or limit would be if it were the same.
Well, what about scenario two, Jason? You mentioned cutting benefits.
Well, this is, right, it's like if no action is taken, benefits are going to get cut, right? That's sort of what they, hey, we're at 78% solvency or 78% ability to pay benefits from just the revenue coming in. And so this would be a proactive cut that not only just sort of like gets to the point of actually like creating the ability to pay something, but also shores up again that long-term solvency. And so that would take a 25.2%, so about just over 3% additional reduction that would close, right, that big gap there that we're seeing for long-term solvency.
Okay, well, I gotta say, I'm not a fan of that. Let's move on to scenario three here.
Yeah. And so scenario three is just taking new claimants, right? Folks that will be claiming after, let's say, this calendar year, as the example is what they said in the report. by just over 30%, right? So somebody who's not relying on the benefits today, right, has their future benefit reduced, which requires, of course, different and more planning from them, because now they have to discover like how they're going to bridge that gap. But at least they have the planning time frame and runway to do it. If we're saying, hey, we're going to make these cuts for everyone and catch a lot of folks without maybe necessarily the planning time frame and runway to do it, it's going to be, a lot worse outcome for a lot of folks.
I feel like just hearing scenario 3 might make some folks who are eligible for Social Security today want to claim Social Security today just in case scenario 3 would happen. And of course, that's something we can test for again in the Right Capital software. But what would you say to somebody who came to you and asked, Jason, should I claim Social Security today just in case this potential scenario might get passed?
Well, here's the interesting thing. If that particular person is at their earliest claiming date, right? If they make their claim at age 62, the reduction in benefits is about 30%. So essentially what happens there is you sort of say, okay, I claimed and now I'm in and now I get, right, 30% less than I would get at full retirement age, but I've protected myself from the potential 30% cut into the future, right? So it's like you maybe can, figure out a way to maneuver around doing that, because claiming early, in some cases, right, can minimize, or not maximize, I should say, not maximize your lifetime benefits.
Yeah, I think it's also important to remember that we're all in this together. Social Security is a backup for all of us who have paid in and earned enough credits to qualify. So if something happens, it'll be across the board. Nobody is going to necessarily be singled out here.
Sure. No, absolutely. And one of the things that wasn't mentioned in the report that I have long, I don't want to say advocated for, but definitely believed was another means of addressing this would be raising that age, right? So taking maybe, right, not benefits down, but saying, okay, instead of 67, your age is now 67 and a half, right? Like they did the months thing for so many, birth years way back when. Maybe it's 68, whatever the case is. Maybe the long-term, right, claiming, or the sort of final age you can claim goes up to like 72, right? So I think that's another potential means. I, of course, am not an actuary. I haven't studied exactly how the, numbers work out on that, but it's something that makes a logical sense to me from a standpoint of like, how can we potentially help this without, sort of going and cutting everyone's benefits, as the only solution.
Yeah, let us not forget that the current Social Security Administration has gone through changes in the past. This is not the first time.
Absolutely. And at the end of the day, I think, right, because there's going to have to be the political will to get all this done, right? There's going to have to be a lot of negotiation, a lot of give and take, et cetera. Like, I think it will be a combination of things. I could see the payroll tax rate increasing some. I could see the ages going up some, and I could see new or future beneficiaries, hopefully only, seeing a reduction, right, in some benefits. And hopefully the confluence of all of those things is what we come to, instead of one sort of dramatic thing that is could be detrimental for many.
So let's get into today's big takeaway with that. And I think the big takeaway is that if and when there is a change to the Social Security system, we bake it into financial plans.
One big important point there, right, is that your other resources, your other means, right, how you position and how you utilize them in consideration of something like a reduction in your Social Security income or the timing of when you receive it, et cetera. Because you have the planning and the tool capability, the planning capabilities and the tools available to evaluate that, you should, right? You should ensure that if this were to happen, it's not going to leave you kind of in the cold or in the poorhouse.
So what ideas do you have? Do you have maybe a fifth scenario on top of Jason's potential fourth that could change the Social Security system for the better? Do you have another idea or way that you are potentially preparing for a worst case scenario so that you are not at the mercy of a change to the Social Security system? Let us know at podcast@fpfoco.com or reach out to us on your favorite social media channels at FPFoco.
Yeah, I definitely look forward to hearing some of these ideas. So feel free to reach out. Well, hey, thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you soon.
Jason Speciner and Regina Neenan are investment advisor representatives of FP FOCO, a registered investment advisor. The information in this podcast is provided for general educational and entertainment purposes only. It may not apply to you or your specific circumstances and should not be considered financial, investment, or tax advice.